Lesson 4, topic, compound inequalities. Learning target, I can write and graph compound inequalities. First off, a compound inequality is two inequalities joined by the word and or. So an and compound inequality, we also call it a between compound inequality because it's between two numbers. So in words, all real numbers less than 6 and at least 2. So the word at least means greater than or equal to, so x is greater than or equal to 2. So it's both of these things. Like each number will fit both of these things. So on the graph, we can see it better. So if I put these numbers on the graph, and I graph both of those inequalities on the same graph, I have x is greater than or equal to 2, so I would shade 2, color in that circle, and shade to the right, because 3 and 4 are greater than 2. And x is less than 6, so it would be an open circle at 6, and I would shade towards 5 and 4, because those are less than 6. So you can see it meets between the two circles. So that is an and compound inequality. So the opposite of that is an or compound inequality, so it's either one or the other. So in this case, we have all real numbers greater than 6, if x is greater than 6, and in the middle, or at most 2. So at most means 2 is the greatest the number can be. All the numbers are going to be smaller than that, so that's going to be less than or equal to. So when we graph that, again, we put the numbers on our number line and graph both of the inequalities. So x is less than or equal to 2, we put a closed circle at 2 and shade to the left because 1 is less than 2. And then x is greater than 6, we have an open circle at 6 and we graph to the right. So it's really just graphing two inequalities at the same time instead of just one inequality. So here you're given graphs and you're going to write a compound inequality for the given graphs. So just looking at this graph, I know it's an or because it goes in opposite directions. The shading happens in the opposite directions. So for this graph right here, the number is 0. So x is, and we're going less than 0, and we're not equal to 0. And then we put or in the middle, and then on this side, the number is 7, so x and 7. And it's going greater than, because 8 and 9 are greater than 7. So we have greater than, and the circle is closed, so greater than or equal to 7. For this next graph, we have shading in between the two circles. So I know that this is an and compound inequality. So I know my two numbers are -6 and 0. So I'm going to show you another way to write an and compound inequality. So you put the variable in the middle. You put the -6 on the left. We put the 0 on the right. And then both of your arrows are going to go in the same way. So it's going to be both less than signs. And then all you have to do is figure out if one needs to be underlined or not. So since this circle is closed, we would put a line underneath that less than symbol, but this one is open, so this less than symbol just says less than. The other way you can write it is you can write it as two separate inequalities. So we'd have x is greater than or equal to -6 and x is less than 0. So you can write it both ways. So compound inequalities are really helpful for real life situations. We have two real world problems and then you can move into your practice. We have a crane sits on top of a camera car and faces toward the front. The crane's maximum height is this 18 feet and minimum height, 4 feet, above the ground are shown. Write and graph a compound inequality that describes the possible heights of the crane. So since it can only move between these two numbers, since it's between, it's going to be an and compound inequality. So we know that it cannot be bigger than 18, so x is going to be less than 18, but it can go up to 18, so we're going to add that equal sign. And 4 is that minimum height. So it can't go lower than 4. So x has to be greater than 4, or it could be equal to 4. So you can write it this way, or you can write it the other way like I showed you before. You put the x in the middle, put the lower number on the left, the higher number on the right, and then just put your signs in the middle there. One last example. In order to be admitted for a certain ride at an amusement park, a child must be at least 36 inches tall and less than 48 inches tall. Write and graph an inequality that describes the height of children that cannot be admitted. I want you to give this problem a try on your own. Check your answer in Edpuzzle, and then you can move into the practice.